very much, and yeah, thanks to Kin for having us on today. It's really a pleasure. Yeah, well, you hit some high points already, so I'll just get right into it. Just flip right down. Obviously, disclaimer, forward-looking statements in here, so please, have a look through our presentation and our information on our website. As far as IsoEnergy, for those that aren't familiar with the company, we haven't been around too long. We're formed back in 2016, and really we came out of NextGen. We were spun out of NextGen. They put in 5 properties at that time, 5 Eastern Athabasca properties to create the company. And it was really, if you look back, it was at a incredibly difficult time in 2016. So I put the one chart up on the screen there, where it's just as the price of uranium and where the company was formed, sort of at the bottom. So tough time, but really a great time to form a uranium company if you have the wherewithal to get through those tough times, because basically there was a lot of people getting out of the industry, and so it really provided an opportunity. Our focus has been in the Athabasca Basin, in northern Saskatchewan, and just focusing on high quality properties in that jurisdiction. We've put together a strong technical and commercial team. And really, this again, the strategic timing of that was something, because not many companies were able to put together companies, or had the foresight to put together a company at that time. But coming out of NextGen, it really helped us. We were able to pick up assets at a time when others were leaving the market, and really leverage some of the expertise that we initially had in the company, and still do, on the exploration side and in capital markets. The strategy, from the get-go and still today is to continue to stake and acquire very prospective property in the Eastern Athabasca, and specifically the Eastern Athabasca, and I'll get into some of the benefits of that in a moment. But what we found was, after putting together or having the 5 initial properties from NextGen, we were able to pick up a lot of high quality properties that were being left behind, just because the market was at such a low point, and because there was no funding available. So we picked up more than, today we have more than 20 great high quality properties in that part of the world. Our flagship, as was mentioned, is the Larocque East property, which is home to the Hurricane Zone, which is now the world's highest grade uranium deposit. We have a portfolio of many other properties, though, as you can see on this map, and it's something that we, now that we've got the resource on Hurricane and are taking it forward in different ways, not on the exploration front so much, we're focusing our attention on some of these other great properties in the portfolio. Before we get to that, though, let's take a look at Hurricane. And as mentioned, we have a resource. We put that initial mineral resource out in July of 2022, and it's really been an incredible process with Hurricane. The property was acquired in 2018 in May, so it wasn't one of the original properties. We bought that. We were 100% owner of the property. A couple months later, we put our first drill hole on the property and hit some good mineralization. And it was from that point in July of 2018 that much of the company's focus really turned to taking Hurricane forward. And so we've completed 6 drill programs since then. You see a list of some of the very high grade, high quality drill hole results that we had through the course of some of that exploration. Just incredible high grade mineralization, on par with some of the best mineralization and deposits in the Athabasca Basin. Hole LE 2076, you can see highlighted there, was one of our best, 3.5 meters at 74%. So just incredible high grade uranium. So where that came out, as we put together our resource this past summer, we have an indicated resource of 48.61 million pounds at an average grade of 34.5%. So again, just really incredible ore grades, for a deposit that is right on par with some of the best in the basin. There's an inferred resource as well, 2.66 million pounds at 2.2%. And just to kind of highlight the drawing that we have here, this is just sort of a top-down schematic, but you can see the dark orange is really the high grade zone, and that that high grade zone within that 48 million pounds represents almost 44 million pounds, and that's at 52%. So it's a very compact, very consolidated ore body. It's an unconformity hosted deposit, which is very typical in the Athabasca Basin in this area. There is a line there. You can see that line to the left. It is a property border. So we do know that, you know, the high grade zone bumps right up against that property border. That's a property called Dawn Lake, owned by Cameco, and Orano, operated by Cameco. Of course, we don't have any influence or insight into the other side, but you know, it's our view that it's highly likely that there's something on the other side, and we don't know how much or what that is, but that's another interesting piece of the story to come. Just, you know, one more quick look at the ore body itself. You can see that same schematic from the top, and just circled a little cross section, layered it kind of horizontally flat, and it just gives you a sense of what this deposit does look like. Again, it's a very small deposit, it's a very small footprint for this, you know, almost 50 million pounds. And that little layer, that almost that pancake of high grade uranium, is sitting right on top of the underlying basement rock, the gray to the bottom, and most of the deposit itself is sitting in the unconsolidated or the unstructured Athabasca sandstone. So really, you know, kind of consistent with a lot of other great deposits in the basin. Cigar Lake is very similar, obviously a bigger deposit, but very similar, sitting in that sandstone basin on the top of the basement rock, similar to a Phoenix that Denison's is developing as well. This is just, it's kind of a busy slide, but just to give you an indication of how high grade and how consolidated this deposit is. We've used a 1% cutoff grade for it, similar to what's been used at Cigar Lake as an example. But really, it's incredibly insensitive to cutoff. So 94% of the deposit is still retained at a cutoff grade of 10%, which is really quite incredible. As far as, you know, other, you know, pieces to mention about Hurricane, there really is a lot of strategic advantages to this deposit. Obviously, first and foremost is the high grade nature of it. That high grade nature provides, first of all, a very small footprint, and it provides a lot of, you know, ability to be flexible in how you go about taking this deposit forward. It's also quite shallow. So if you look at the diagram or the drawing at the bottom, it's just a comparison to where some of the other great deposits in the Athabasca Basin, you know, are in comparison to Hurricane. So we're at 325 meters below the surface, and there's many, whether it's MacArthur, Cigar, Phoenix, others that are right around there or even deeper. So it's only to say that the depth of the deposit does not provide any unparalleled problems, I guess, or it doesn't provide any barriers to extracting the ore body. The other, well, just going down, you know, a bit of a list here, but you know, infrastructure is another piece. And so when we say that we're focused on the Eastern Athabasca Basin, it's really, you know, because there is a lot of infrastructure. It's where a lot of the great deposits and mines currently exist. MacArthur, Cigar, other deposits over the years have been found in this area, and as a result, there's a lot of infrastructure, whether it's roads, power, and in this case, we're also only 40 kilometers from Orano's McLean Lake Mill, which, you know, is a huge advantage for any deposit that becomes an economic deposit, hopefully down the road. Orano's mill is sitting there, and it's the mill that processes all of the Cigar Lake ore. It does have some excess capacity, but it's also Cigar doesn't last forever. So there's certainly, you know, a potential fit there with any deposit that might be near that mill. So something to definitely keep in mind down the road. There's no water at surface. So if anyone's been to northern Saskatchewan, this part of the world, you'll note that it's a lot of trees and it's a lot of water. And if you don't have water at the top of your ore body, then it's a strategic advantage and something you don't have to manage. There's also a lot of innovation going on in the basin, and you know, the history of the basin has seen that when these deposits are found, a lot of innovation goes into developing them. And so that's certainly been the case with MacArthur, with raised bore and freezing technology, the same with Cigar Lake and jet boring technology there. And there's a lot of work going on right now to look at how do you develop these new deposits, and some that are smaller in size, such as Hurricane. How do you do it without maybe all the underground workings? So there's a lot of work going on the in situ recovery front, looking at potentially extracting uranium through solution mining in the basin. It's never been done before. Denison's working on that. There's Orano's got a technology called Sabre that they've been working on, really just, briefly, is just sort of a high from surface directional drilling concept, getting underground and using a jet bore technology to extract without all the underground development. So anyways, just a lot of work going on that could potentially be very helpful as we look at how to advance Hurricane. It also, as I said, whether it's strategic advantage or not, but it borders on the Cameco-Orano-Dawn Lake project. And at the very least, we know there's something on the other side. We don't know what that is, but it'll certainly be an interesting story to see unfold as work potentially gets done on that side, and we find out what is or isn't on the other side. So that will be exciting to watch. Then I would say probably one of the last, but not the smallest by any means, one of the advantages is the jurisdiction. And there's a lot going on in the uranium and nuclear world these days, whether it's supply coming from Russia, other places like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, just other parts of the world, and a lot of geopolitical instability that's playing into a lot of companies that do need this uranium to power their nuclear power plants, looking at where do we want to get uranium down the road. And so a place like Saskatchewan, which has always been highly at a high level, sought after as a source of uranium, I'd say today new deposits like Hurricane in a jurisdiction like Saskatchewan are becoming even more important. That's really, just sort of the high level view of Hurricane and sort of where we are at the moment. We're also, as a result of turning our attention away from the exploration side of Hurricane and starting to look at more of the development side and how that plays out, we're able to turn our attention and our resources, our geological team, to some of our other properties that we've had for some time, and frankly, have sort of been left to the sideline as we've advanced Hurricane. So we've got, this past summer, we did 7,000 meters of drilling at 3 different properties: Larocque East, which is the home of Hurricane, but it's also a very big property. So we've done drilling in other areas. We did some drilling at our Geiger property, our Trident property, and we also have advanced a lot of geophysical surveying of some of the other properties that you see in this drawing in blue, in order to advance them and kind of establish new targets for the next drill program, or even the drill program 2 or 3 seasons down the road. As far as the Larocque East, this past summer, like I said, we drilled on this property, but not at Hurricane. So if you take a look at the map, the star to the very far left, that's Hurricane. But the property itself is very large. So we did a few holes just to the east there, a couple of kilometers, where you see it noted as Hurricane East. We did some way out to the far tip of the property at Larocque Lake, and we did some to the north on an area called the Kernahan Trend. And some good results, some favorable alteration and structure. I'd say at Kernahan, this was untested in the past by ISO, and so we really did have some a good broad zone of alteration that we view as associated with faulting come out of the results of those holes. So we're just waiting for all of our assays still to come back, but at the end of the day, we're planning to get back up there and follow up some of those results in 2023. Geiger, we did some first pass drill testing on this property this summer. We'd done some testing last summer, followed it up with some geophysical work, and in this Q23 and Q48 area that you see noted, we sunk 8 holes this summer for about 3,300 meters of drilling, and just it started to find what we we hope to find some good favorable alteration again in structure in both areas. And we're, the geochemical results are pending, but that will really guide our follow-up on that property over the next season or two. The final property we did this summer was our Trident property. And this is interesting to us because it's actually outside of the basin, so just outside the sandstone cover. Very limited historical drilling. So we put six holes in there, obviously, a lot more shallow because you're not going through that overburden, but some successful first pass drilling and intersected some prospective graphitic structures. And we're doing some surveying in 2023, which is intended to prioritize further drilling, which we'll want to do in that property. Just finalize or follow up on the final part of the program that we just did in the summer. The early stage projects that we have, some of those we did some geophysical surveying, and again, this is really just to set us up for future programs. Get that information, start to analyze it, and interpret those results, and that'll help establish further programs or follow-up programs in the future for some of these properties. With all of that, again, the team is working on it. We've mapped out sort of a plan for the winter 2023 program, and that's being finalized with budgets, etc. But we expect to have a very robust winter program coming up just in a couple of months. That's really it on what we're up to on the technical side, on the exploration side. Just to wrap things up a little bit. I mean, as far as where we sit as IsoEnergy in the nuclear space, I mean, times couldn't be looking more positive from our perspective. The supply-demand fundamentals themselves just continue to be very robust. There's certainly a big shortfall in existing primary production to fill the existing demand that is out there, and that hasn't been filled in any significant way over the last few years. Certainly, there's been a lot of projects that have come offline over the last 10-year down cycle, but a lot of that is going to need to be filled as inventories start to reduce, and certainly those overhang of inventories are gone. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to help fill that gap in the future. As I mentioned before, there's a big geopolitical shift going on, whether it's Russia and the invasion of Ukraine, and just a reluctance now of the Western utilities to take Russian material down the road, which is still a major supplier to the West, or other issues in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, or just a desire to have production a little closer to home, whether it's in the United States or Europe. A lot of those things are changing the landscape of nuclear and the uranium mining industry, and we'll see a lot of changes, I believe, over the next year or two to come. All that you just throw on top of it the growing acceptance of nuclear in the fight against climate change, and just the positive ESG aspect of the investments that people see into nuclear. You see a lot of countries and jurisdictions reversing shutdowns, whether it's California or Germany as a country, or even in Michigan, who just shut down a nuclear plant not that long ago, only to decide that they need to restart that. The EU has backed nuclear recently, making it a part of their EU taxonomy rulebook, which is huge, provides a lot of benefits for those wanting to invest in nuclear. And countries like Japan, despite everything that's happened over the last 10 years following Fukushima, they've recommitted, and they know that they need to grow nuclear in order to manage their energy needs in the future. France has recommitted in a big way. South Korea has reversed what had come down as a nuclear wind down. That's completely been reversed course. And in other countries like UK has determined that they will make significant new investments into nuclear. Poland has just made decisions on new reactors, and so just a lot of really great positive news from all aspects of nuclear, whether it's just the fight for climate change, or just the pure need for new CO2 emitting generation. Closing things up, just let you know where we are from a cash point of view. We've got $3 million in the bank, but we did just complete a very successful financing last week. where we raised just over $18 million. We're just finalizing and closing on that, but that'll put us in really good shape for the future. We got excellent support both from our existing majority shareholder NextGen, other strategic investors. Queens Road Capital agreed to invest further, and we put some shares into the charitable flow through market as well. So just really pleased with the support we're getting. We've got a great team in place. I'll let you have a look on the website. I know we're close on time here. I've got a very strong board with a ton of experience. Lee Currier, the CEO of NextGen, remains our chairman. We just added Peter Natupsky to our board, who's a long-term corporate development, a lot of experience with TD Bank, and now working as a VP of corporate development with Agnico Eagle. So just a really strong board, and just a lot of positive things going for ISO. Given the deposit we have, there's no one else that has a deposit like we do, a new high-grade deposit like this over the last few years in a jurisdiction as positive as Saskatchewan. So yeah, I'll just close it off there. Just really appreciate the time with Kin, and happy to take a couple questions if we have time.
Great, thank you so much. And I just want to let everybody out there know that, as mentioned at the top, this is pre-recorded as Tim had a scheduling conflict. So while we can't take questions live, you can email us questions at iso@kincommunications.com, and we will have somebody get back to you with the answers to those questions. But I've got a couple here to ask. The first one is regarding the Hurricane deposit, because I think somebody new to the uranium space, the term high grade gets thrown around a lot in the mining
Yeah.
industry. But
Mhm.
when we look at the Hurricane deposit compared to both the worldwide average quality of U3O8 and the Athabasca Basin, which is considered
Yeah.
the Saudi Arabia of uranium, it is still massively above. So could you maybe speak to that, the quality of the U3O8 grade and how that compares to some other deposits?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's true. I mean, high grade gets thrown out a lot. When it comes to uranium in Saskatchewan and those deposits that have become, world-class economic deposits, they really are, extraordinarily high grade. So, the high grade deposits in the Athabasca Basin tend to be, up to 100 times the world average. So when you look at, Kazakhstan right now is a great example. They're the world's biggest supplier or producer of uranium. They have low grade, ore bodies that, still make sense economically because they use in situ recovery. But they are, easily 100 times, less lower grade than the deposits in Saskatchewan. Now, the benefit of that, being that high grade is that as I mentioned before, you have a small footprint. These are, they take up a very small, space. You're not moving a lot of rock with these deposits. They tend to be have some, technical challenges in the Athabasca Basin. There's a lot of water, in that unconsolidated, that unstructured sandstone where these deposits lie. But the technical innovation is what's come into play to make these deposits economic. The freezing of ore bodies, getting underground and using different techniques to extract them. But yeah, as far as there's no other jurisdiction in the world that has come up with deposits in the 10, 20, 30% average grades. And when you look at Hurricane at an average grade of 34.5%, it stands above and beyond really, again, any deposit on the planet. So it may not be as big pounds wise as a MacArthur cigar, but the average grade is the highest grade deposit anywhere.
And just speaking to the path to production for IsoEnergy, what's the plan there? Is the plan to develop and then ultimately produce yourselves? Is the plan to get acquired once it gets to that point, or are you keeping your options open at this time?
Yeah, it's probably, mostly the latter, but, we have a lot of work to do. We're at an early stage. We just put out the resource. We're kind of going down the path of looking at what are our next steps there. Maybe from a high, concept level study, what are the mining methods that might be most applicable and the best, economics around them for a deposit like Hurricane. Also we have this border that I mentioned before. And so certainly as a standalone deposit, 50 million pounds almost at 34.5%, we would be, happy to continue to advance it on a standalone basis. At the same time, there certainly is something on the other side of the border, and it will be good to understand what that is, whether it's a little bit more uranium or if it's something, bigger on the other side of the deposit that Orano and Cameco eventually, maybe find if they're doing work on over on that side. That will certainly, I think, dictate the story a little bit, or at least it will open up different avenues for how you take a project like this forward, whether it's, joint ventures or, purchases are always possible in this industry. That's for sure. We do have a very supportive majority shareholder, NextGen, who continues to own just over 50% of the company. So there's a lot of moving parts there. But yeah, our first step is really just to start advancing and understanding what we have and how we can potentially take it forward ourselves.
Great. And maybe a follow-up there concerning your relationship with NextGen. Could you
Yeah.
maybe shed some light on what advantage that gives you and the role they play in IsoEnergy?
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously it's huge. They, were the ones that spun out the properties, at the get-go, and they've continued to be very supportive. They haven't wanted to dilute out or, sell their ownership. In fact, as I mentioned, we just completed a financing last week, and they contributed to that financing, and will continue to maintain a share in the company that's 50% or greater. So obviously financially that provides us a lot of stability and a lot of benefit that many juniors don't have. But yeah, I'd say it goes beyond that. There's a lot of strategic reasons. I mean, we get great support from, Lee Curry is our chairman, so he's very vested in the company and its success. They continue to like what we're doing, so that's I believe why they continue to invest in us. But they're happy to help in other areas as well. So we're still a small company, so where we need some help in other areas on the strategic side, even on the administrative organizational side, they're happy to share some of their resources when needed, if needed. And just that alone is another great advantage I think that we have being so close to NextGen.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Tim. As I mentioned, if you have any questions you would like to ask concerning IsoEnergy, please do send an email to iso@kincommunications.com. We will talk to Tim for you and get the answer. And thanks for joining us, Tim, and you have a great day.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again for having us.